Hi, James.
Hi, Darren.
How are you?
Great. First time in Doncaster.
Yeah, great. Well, just for the listeners, I'm sat here with James Rushton, who is going to tell us a little bit about what he does. And I'm new to this as well. And I'd like to ask him a few questions. And I'm sure our listeners would probably want to ask the same questions. So, James, how did you start being a vet?
Vet school was a pretty easy decision to make. I think we've always had animals, all sorts of things like dogs, turtles, all sorts of things that we found. So always had a big interest in biology, always had an interest in animals, always had a big interest in medicine. So it was kind of quite easy to get into the field. Getting into eyes was a bit of a coincidence, I would say. I actually wanted to become a horse surgeon, a large animal surgeon. And then as part of that, I needed to do several extracurricular stuff to kind of boost my CV. And then during that period, my then mentor, who mentored me for my PhD, offered me a residency, which is a 3-year specific training program to become a specialist in eyes. And here I am.
Brilliant. So, when we're talking specifically about eyes,
Yes.
is there any difference between, let's say, a horse to a dog? Is it a different test you do, or are you looking for the same thing?
Very, very different. So in dogs, it's very regimented. It's very standardized. We know what we're looking for in specific breeds. We know what we're looking for in terms of the disease processes. Horses are, at the moment, it's a bit of a mess, to be honest. Eye testing in horses when you're doing pre-purchase examinations is very different. You're not looking specifically for anything. You're looking for any changes that you can see in the eye. And then you have to make a subjective judgment call whether this is affecting vision or whether this is something that could progress and cause problems in the future. So it's very, very difficult to do a pre-purchase examination and really give an owner a confident answer in terms of what we're expecting. In a dog, it's very different. We're looking for specific diseases which have been well studied in most cases. And we kind of know how they're going to progress. We kind of know how they're going to affect animals' vision. And with some of them, we also know how they're going to affect the offspring.
Okay. So, my knowledge of this is very limited. Now, when I used to purchase a dog for shooting, not shooting the dog, obviously, when I used to purchase a dog for hunting and training, the only thing I looked for was how good was the mum, how good was the dad, and that would do. I was once speaking to a very well known trainer in the UK, and we were talking about hip scores. And he said to me, um, we were discussing hip scores, and I was quite concerned how things were changing. And he said to me, at one time, we used to check a dog's hips, we used to throw something over a 5 bar gate. We used to send the dog. If it got over at gate and come back over at gate, it was good enough to breed from. And that was many years ago. And now with the eye testing, I never even knew about it. And I was made aware a few years ago, and nobody, still people, very famous people in the UK who actually are against it. And I presume they're against it because they're finding out that some of their top dogs have actually got a problem. And I I heard about it, so we started testing our dogs. Fortunately, all our dogs are clear, and I'm just, how did it change from not having to test dogs' eyes, and then all of a sudden there's all this testing of all different genetic testing as well. Sometimes I wonder, is it just about health or is it all about money?
It's definitely not about money. I mean, eye testing is a small proportion of what we do as eye specialists, but I think it's a very important part because over the years we're seeing so many different really dramatic diseases, eye diseases in animals, stuff that is genetic, hereditary, stuff that could have been cured at the breeding stage, and we're now having to treat and breed out of the breeds. to give you an example, glaucoma, for instance. Glaucoma, I think your dog had a test for glaucoma, had a
Yes.
gonioscopy done, is one of the most horrible conditions you can have as a dog. It's horrible as a human, but it's even worse as a dog, because in a dog, if you have it in one eye, you're going to get it within about 12 months in the other eye. So I spent most of my working days of trying to cure these conditions. And with doing eye testing, you're actually at the stage of trying to get it out of the breed so you don't have to treat it anymore. Glaucoma is likely going to cause blindness within their lifetime. And if you breed from a dog who himself has glaucoma or is predisposed to glaucoma, and that dog has 15, 20 offspring within a lifetime, you could potentially have 5 or 6 of those end up having the same problem.
Right.
So I think eye testing is something that we probably should do more of. And I think there's certain breeds that we're not looking for specifically at the moment, which we probably should do in the future. I know we're talking about gun dogs, but say, for instance, pugs, which are not on the list for dogs that we're looking eye testing for. 10 years ago, I never saw a pug with a cataract. Now, I'm operating just as many cataracts in a pug as I'm doing in any other breed.
Wow.
And that is breeding.
Wow.
And that is breeding.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm not against it. I'm just asking you questions that I think I need answering, and probably the people listening will want to know the same. And so is it a set amount of breed of dogs? Is there 10 breed lines of dogs that you're checking, or is there 20, 30? Is there an amount of dog breed lines that you are actually checking?
Yeah, so it's so at the moment on the list of dogs that we're looking at specifically, we've got 65 breeds on the list to date. That we're looking for specific conditions which we are presuming to have hereditary problems. Hereditary meaning problems that can be passed down to offspring. Any dog can be eye tested, and even dogs which are not on the list, we would encourage to have those looked at, because data that we collect will then go to the BVA and the Kennel Club, and then what we call the Eye Panel Working Party, which is sort of our immediate governing body for all the eye panelists, all the eye examiners, will then view all of those findings, and then a breed of dog that might not have been on the list for a specific condition, if we see enough of those cases, might end up going on the list, and then we end up seeing more and more of those cases.
Right, that's interesting. So when I took my dogs, I didn't know much about it other than it was going to cost me a lot of bloody money. Now, that was fine because I knew it was for the better. I was given a scoring system, and I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it was 1 to 4 or 0 to 4 or something like that. And one of the dogs got a score of 1. Am I to worry about a score of 1, or should I be, hey, that's okay? And can you explain the scoring system if you don't mind? Yeah.
So the scoring system is that you're talking about is specifically for gonioscopy, which is the examination of the drainage angle. There are other diseases, particularly things like retinal diseases and cataracts, which is a yes/no, right? So we don't grade those. It's either yes, you're affected, or no, you're not affected. Gonioscopy, looking at the drainage angle, is there's a level of subjectivity to the matter. So you have to look at both eyes. We put a specialized lens on the eye, and then we have a look at, we basically split the eye into 4 quadrants, and then we have a look at those with a magnifying glass essentially, and a specialized lens to look at it in more detail. And then we have to count how many of those clock hours are normal and abnormal. And then the scoring system. So you've got, at the moment, we've got a grade 0 to 3. That might change in the future. So we might make it into only 3 grades rather than 4. But at the moment, it's a grade 0, which is the perfect drainage angle, which has got less than 1% changes. We've got a grade 1, which is anywhere between 1 to 25%. A grade 2, which is 25 to 75, which is a huge amount of difference, of variation. So if you've got a grade 2, you can have a good grade 2, or you can have a really bad grade 2. And then a fail would be a grade 3, which has got more than 75% of changes. The only fail is a grade 3. Anything other than that is a pass, which means you can breed from them. Having said that, we as panelists don't give breeding advice. It's the breeding clubs who give the breeding advice. We just score them. We just say what we see.
Yeah.
And it's then up to the breeding club to decide, am I going to breed this grade 0 spaniel with a grade 2 just to keep the genetic lines a bit more open and not have too much inbreeding? Or should we say, well, a bad grade 2 shouldn't be bred from? So we don't make that decision. The breeding club makes that decision.
So, right, thank you for that. If, from what you've just said, if I took one of my dogs, we got a score of 3, and I'm aware now that 3 is not the best number to be getting.
Yes.
But my personal choice, and I say I'm still breeding my dog because I love my dog and I want a pup out of her. Then we go out and we find another dog. It may not be eye tested. This would be very foolish of me. But what's to stop me doing that?
Nothing. But if you sell those pups, you can't sell them as an assured breeder's pup, and the grading system will go onto Kennel Club website. So anybody that wants to breed from your dog, or anybody whose dog you want to breed with, has got access to that Kennel Club website and can search for those test results. And any person purchasing one of the puppies from that affected dog would have access to that Kennel Club website and be able to say, well, you sold me a puppy which has got a bad drainage angle.
If I came to you and you tested one of my dogs and you gave it a score of 3,
yep,
and not with any knowledge, I just decide he doesn't know what he's doing, how would I then try and appeal against it? Or would I just go to another person to do the test? How would I, I might think my dog's awesome, but you've clearly seen there's an issue.
Yeah.
And I just want to disagree with it. How do I go about that?
Yeah. So first of all, if I failed your dog, so if I gave him a grade 3, I would always mention the appeals procedure to you. And I would say, listen, I'm sure that your dog's amazing. Looking at what I'm seeing, I judge this as a grade 3. You're more than well within your right to appeal that procedure. And I will give you a leaflet that explains all the appeals procedure. But basically what it is if you want to have a second opinion, the best way to do it, the most, both for us as well for yourself, would go through the official appeals procedure, which means that you would then contact the BVA and put an appeal in, which has to be done within 30 days of the examination. You can then either choose which other panelist you want to have your dog looked at, or the BVA or the chief panelist can decide which panelist might be in your area who can give you a second opinion. You would then take your dog to that other panelist. The other panelist does exactly the same thing as we've been doing. If he agrees with what I've seen, then the appeal is that's it. That's the end of story. It's a grade 3. If a different panelist judged that that the drainage angle of your dog is better than I assessed, it would then go to the chief panelist, and then the chief panelist will then have a look at your dog, and he's the one to decide, and he either agrees with myself or with the other panelist.
Right. Okay.
That's a proper way of doing it. And the reason that that's a proper way of doing it is that the information that we're producing goes on the Kennel Club website. So if you don't go through the appeals procedure, the data on the Kennel Club is going to be really confusing for everybody. So it actually has to go through the appeals procedure. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult.
So if you gave one of my dogs a score of 3,
yes,
I went through the correct procedure.
Yep.
And the other guy gave me a score of 2.
Yep.
That would officially change on the my KC then.
Not at that point, because you've got 2 disagreeing results.
Yes.
And if you've got a disagreement, the chief panelist, who is a person who's appointed, and at this point it's one person, in a few years it could be a different person, he would then have to look at your dog himself or herself, and that would be the decision that counts.
Okay, thank you. If I were to ask you what's the biggest breed, I just want to talk about gun dogs, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm being very selfish, but if I were to ask you one specific breed that you see the most issues with, from Cocker Spaniels, Springer Spaniels, Golden Retrievers, Labradors, or any of the gun dog breeds, which one would you say is the main one that's raising issues for yourself? You know, and these are the ones that we have to really watch out for.
Are you talking to me as a clinician or as a person who's doing eye testing? Because those are very different things.
Eye testing.
For eye testing. As eye testing, I think the breed that we see the most is probably Labradors. We see quite a lot of those, but that depends on your geographic area. So it depends on where you go in the country. You're going to see different breeds and different amounts. So I'd probably say Labradors and Spaniels are the most that we see the most in terms of eye testing of the gun dog population.
With gun dogs, originally, when I was talking maybe 30 years ago, we just bought a dog and see how it went. Now we're getting all this testing. Did we start with one test and then we found out that we needed another test and then we found out another? When will it end? Or is it just open until, if we keep finding things wrong with our dogs, we're going to test for it? Because I see it escalating and growing until we can't actually afford to breed our dogs because we've spent £1,000 doing all these tests.
So I think the eye testing part, so the physical, a vet like me looking at the eye, is always going to be the same. The only thing that might change over time is the cost of the eye examination. But the actual way of performing the test, I think, is going to stay the same for many, many years. I think what will change is that we're going to see more genetic tests available. Obviously, we as eye panelists, we don't do those genetic tests. Any vet can take blood and can send those bloods off to be genetically analyzed. So I think we're going to be seeing more and more of those genetic tests available. And particularly the University of Cambridge are doing a lot of genetic work on specific eye diseases and the genetic background to them. And I think the genetic tests don't substitute looking at the eye, but they are a very, very important add-on to the test.
Okay. If my dog genetically says that everything's fine, what's the point in me eye testing? I'm being devil's advocate. What's the point? If I've got a certificate that's saying everything should be fine, what's the point in me doing it?
Good question again. So if you've got a genetic test, that genetic test is very specific to a certain breed and to a certain disease. So I'm going to give you an example. So we've got a condition in the back of the eye that we call progressive retinal atrophy, PRA. You might have heard of it.
Yes.
There is a genetic test for several different breeds, and there's several different genetic backgrounds to that condition in certain breeds, right? But the condition PRA is an umbrella term which probably has about 100 different diseases. And if you just do genetic tests but don't look at the eye, you might miss cases where they've got physical evidence of the disease, but they might be genetically clear because it might just be a different genetic background.
Okay.
So that's why I don't think genetic testing is ever going to replace eye testing completely.
Okay, thank you. If I wanted to be the best person breeder ever, and I test the sire and the dam and everything's clear, we've got a really good genetical testing, everything's fine, my pups arrive and I've got 8 pups, when can I have them tested? Can I take all my pups to you and say, please check these, and then I can put that on the certificate as well? Or do you have to wait a certain amount of time?
Yeah, so there's a litter screening that we do where we look at puppies of certain breeds, but any puppy can be looked at, and any puppy can be tested. We usually look at them when they're about 7 weeks or before 7 weeks. They need to be microchipped. That's one of the most important things. So
Yes.
Because there's no other way of identifying them otherwise. So they need to be microchipped. And again, there's certain breeds that we look for specific diseases which happen at a very early stage.
Okay.
And then you're going to get a separate form. You're not going to get a separate form for each pup. So basically what we do is the microchip numbers all go in the same form. We then say microchip number X, Y, and Z is clear. This one may have a disease, and then always says the dog with the microchip number X, Y, and Z has got this condition. And then if you want to use that, you can provide that to the owners, the future owners of those puppies, so they can say that the litter screening for my pup was clear.
Would that go on the Kennels Club website the same as it would on an adult dog?
No. And we don't stamp the Kennel Club registration card either for litter screening. So the litter screening is basically for the breeders who then want to sell their pups as an additional insurance or assurance for the owners who are going to purchase the pup, that the puppies were genetically clear at the time of the examination. But a lot of these breeds get conditions that don't show until later on in life, which is why if you have a puppy that was genetically clear, I wouldn't use that as information to then breed from it. Before you breed from it, you still need to have an eye test done in the adult dog.
Okay. So moving on to adult dogs.
Yes.
What regime do you need for a Labrador? Is it yearly? Is it weekly? You know, I'm asking silly questions and I already know the answer, but some of our listeners may not.
Yeah.
So for a Labrador,
yes,
how often do we need to check the Labrador's eyes?
So a Labrador, the certificate that we issue for the eye examination lasts for 12 months. It's valid for 12 months. The difference is gonioscopy. So if you've got a breed such as a Spaniel that needs gonioscopy, the eye test, so looking at the back of the eye, that test result is valid for 12 months. The gonioscopy, the examination of the drainage angle, is valid for 3 years. So the gonioscopy only needs to be repeated every 3 years. The eye test, looking at the back of the eye, needs to be repeated annually.
Okay. So for our listeners, anybody with a Labrador, I need to talk about golden retrievers. Because there's people in the room that actually are interested in golden retrievers, believe it or not. I love them, to be honest. I do love them. They're a different type of dog to everybody. Some people like them, some people don't, but they're a very good dog. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit.
Yeah.
What about golden retrievers? Is there a different eye test for golden retrievers?
They also have the general eye test where we look at we look for cataracts, we look for retinal diseases, but in golden retrievers we also do gonioscopy, which again is we usually do that from year 1 and then every 3 years.
Right. Okay.
But we look for similar things to the Labrador, but not quite the same when it comes to diseases in the back of the eye.
Right. Okay. I'm going to talk about a couple of different breeds because within Kirkborn Spaniels, there's many different breeds.
Yes.
HPRs, so Hunt Point Retriever dogs.
Yes.
What type of tests are out there for that?
I mean, again, we look at the whole eye, so we look at the front and the back of the eye. In Vizslas, we also look at the drainage angle as an important point. We see quite a lot of Vizslas in our clinical work which have glaucoma, so it's definitely one of the breeds that we want to examine the drainage angle for. And again, yes, at the moment there's a certain amount of diseases that we're specifically looking for, but we make a record of any changes that we see. So we're not going to ignore things that we find which might not be in the list for that specific breed. So say for instance we see more and more Vizslas with cataracts, then we're going to make a note of those cataracts, and then over time there might be some more research into those cataracts and the genetic backgrounds.
Right. Okay. One last breed, the Clumber Spaniel. Now, reason I ask this, I've got a very good friend who is he runs a Clumber society, and hopefully they'll be listening to this, and there is thousands of them. I actually hold Clumber Spaniel days for them, and we get together, and they're a great breed. They're a lot slower than the Springer Spaniel and the Cocker Spaniel, but they're very trainable with the right person. So Clumber Spaniels, let's see. Do we do eye tests on Clumber Spaniels?
You can do. They're not on the list at the moment, as it were, but any breed can be eye tested. So even if you've got a dog breed or crossbreeds, we're seeing more and more crossbreeds, which they're not Kennel Club registered breeds, but more and more breeders are more conscious of eye diseases in those breeds and choose to have them eye tested. And even those breeds which are not Kennel Club registered breeds can have those eye tests and can use that certificate when breeding and selling their puppies.
Okay. Interesting that Clumber Spaniels aren't actually on the list of dogs that need to be checked. Is that because there's less problems with them?
I wouldn't say less problems. I think they've got different problems that we don't tend to, that at the moment we're not sure about whether they're hereditary or not. So Clumber Spaniels, I think one of the most common problems that we see in Clumber Spaniels is eyelid conformational problems, right? Which they've been bred for that specific eyelid conformation. And if you have a Clumber Spaniel going to a dog show, then the judges will specifically look for those conformational changes. But as a clinician, there's a certain degree at what point those conformational changes might become a problem and might actually start impacting the dog's health.
Right, thank you. Is there a difference between a show Labrador and a working Labrador? Physically, I know that there is. There'll be some people that's telling me that their show Labrador can do anything a working Labrador. I'm not here to answer whether that's true or not. But is there a difference? Do you see more show Labradors with eye problems than gun dog Labradors? And this goes for the old breeding. So the question is really, do you find more issues with show than working in the eyes?
I wouldn't say from a hereditary or genetic point of view, because genetically they are very similar. I think in the types of changes that we might see in a working Labrador, we might see more changes caused by things like trauma, which again, we're not marking a dog down. You can't fail a dog because he's had a scar on his eye or a scar on the back of his eye because of some sort of infection he might have picked up. So you're not going to fail a dog because of that, but we will make a note of it. So I would probably say in the working Labrador world, we're going to see more changes caused by some sort of physical trauma or things that they've picked up or eaten, which may have caused problems in the back of the eye.
Right. Okay. We've done a podcast regarding insurance. And one of the questions that was asked from one of my club members, why are we getting penalised for our dogs and when they're actually healthy athletes? And the question really was, why should we be paying lots more money for the fat dog over there that the same breed, it's a pedigree, and it doesn't do anything that our dogs do, but we're getting penalised because of that dog over there, So it was quite a big question, and it was an interesting question, and the answer basically was, there's nothing they can do. This is insurance of a club. So when I look to come to you for my eye test for my dogs, would there be, if I said to my insurance company, by the way, my dog is absolutely clear of everything, just like the no claims on my car, shouldn't I be getting a cheaper insurance because my dog's better than the one that's next door that's got eye issues? It's the same breed. This is just a personal opinion rather than, an official opinion. But I feel that if I've tested my dogs to the maximum and everything comes back clear, surely I should see a benefit in that in the insurance world. Would you agree that something like that would work?
I think it would probably encourage more people to have their dogs eye tested if there were some sort of a benefit scheme in terms of insurance. Obviously, I don't have enough insight into the insurance world, to have a professional opinion on that. But I think as a personal opinion, I think it might actually encourage more people to have their dogs' eyes tested. It would probably put more pressure on the person doing the eye testing, because if you mark an animal down because of something, there might be more pressure from that particular breeder in terms of getting more and more appeal procedures through to just be seen by a panelist who who doesn't mark them down for those conditions.
Right.
If that
Okay.
makes sense. So I think it might have an impact. I think from a personal opinion, I think having some sort of a benefit or reward system from insurance companies might make sense, but I'm sure that these insurance companies have got their own opinions and rules on that.
Maybe I have a chat with them and say, hey, what about this? This is a great idea. Yeah. See if we can get it working.
I think the most important, as a clinician, again, not as an eye panelist, but in terms of insurance, is my top tips to anybody insuring an animal is it's not like insuring a car. Don't switch insurance companies yearly, because anything that will ever be noted on clinical records, medical records, will be classed as a pre-existing condition, and they'll pull out as soon as they've got a problem. As soon as any problem is, they'll look at those medical records and they'll find some wiggle room to not have to pay for that condition. That's probably my biggest top tip for anybody insuring their animal.
Right.
And insure them for the highest amount you can afford, because some eye conditions, not only eye conditions, but orthopedic conditions as well. So broken legs, ruptured cruciates can be quite expensive.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Good point. Do you actually operate on eyes?
Yes.
You do?
Yes. One of the most common procedures that we do at our clinic is probably cataract surgeries, followed by fixing trauma holes in eyes. Probably not in gun dogs so much. It's more the short-nosed French bulldogs and pugs that we tend to operate. But in terms of cataracts, pretty much all breeds: working dogs, gun dogs, show dogs, pet dogs.
Right. Okay. I think that we've nearly come to an end to this podcast, and I'm not even looking left to see if he's saying, no, you've got another 10 minutes left, because I'm boss here. And so to summarize, everything is pretty difficult, but I think that the information you've given me has put confidence in me that, doing the right thing is the best way. And people are going to find out very soon that you and I are going to be working together, and we're going to be able to offer that type of service for them. And once they find out, I think it'll be a great thing that we can work together. And hopefully, if all our club members turn up, you're going to be a busy man, So I do look forward to working with you, and I thank you for coming today and spending your time here. And if there's anything else you want to add to it, that's fine. But thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I think there's probably just one thing I would want to point out, because whenever if you pass 99% of your dogs, you get very happy clients. If you fail one, it's not because we're being horrible. It's because, and I only fail dogs if I, hand on heart, can say, I'm worried that this dog is affected by this condition. And we're not trying to be horrible. Nobody wants to say your dog is rubbish and can't be bred from. And also, a lot of these diseases, they can still be used as a gun dog, but they might not be good breeding stock.
Yes.
So if you have a dog who's got a grade 2 drainage angle, which is still a pass, but the breed club decides, actually, we would recommend not breeding from this dog, it doesn't mean that that particular dog is ever going to get glaucoma, and it doesn't mean that this dog isn't going to be an amazing gun dog, right? I think that's the most important. We have to distinguish between the working life of that particular dog and then using them as breeding stock.
I understand. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Take
Thank
care.
you.